Welcome to the Find Creative Expression podcast, conversations about art and creativity. I'm your host, Sarah Crawford, author, musician, and playwright. You can find the show notes and other information at findcreativeexpression.com. And let's get going. Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 14 of the Find Creative Expression podcast. Coming up a little later, I have an interview with industrial musician James Hughey. James is a lot of fun to talk to, so you definitely want to stick around for that. Okay, y'all, I've been kind of depressed lately, which isn't an abnormal thing for me this time of year. I usually get depressed in the winter, especially after the holidays. You know, the New Year enthusiasm has kind of worn off. Not that it really lasted that long this year because the riot was like 6 days into the year. But anyway, I'm having normal kind of seasonal depression, and then we're in a pandemic, so that makes it 10 times worse. And, you know, I'm just really getting pandemic fatigue, as I think we all are. And it's just really frustrating when I see people saying, oh, it's a hoax, or people refusing to wear masks. Like, just put on a mask. It's not that big of a deal. I don't understand, like, what big political statement you're making. Basically, you're just saying, hey, I don't care about other people. So anyway, I'm trying to kind of get over this hurdle, this feeling of everything being overwhelming. You know, I have this idea that, oh, I have to get up 2 hours early and do yoga and write and have a whole morning routine, and you know, I have to sit down and write for an hour. Like, you know, I get these ideas in my head, and then I end up being kind of all or nothing. And if I don't feel like doing one thing, I don't do anything. When, you know, maybe I can't make myself sit down and write for an hour, but can I make myself write 300 words? Probably yes. So this is something that I've told people. This is something I've heard a million times, but I need to be reminded of it, apparently. Another thing I wanted to say, if you're a creative person, obviously creating gives you joy. And, you know, especially right now, I think you really have to hold on to happiness wherever you can find it. So now is a good time to, you know, let yourself enjoy the things you enjoy. Let yourself create the things you want to create. Sing in the shower, draw a picture, color in a coloring book, make some cookies and maybe decorate them. Make someone a card, make someone a playlist. These are all things you can do. I know at the beginning of the pandemic, people were like, oh, we're going to use this time to be productive, and we're going to write books, and we're going to do all this stuff. And, you know, maybe you did that, maybe you didn't, but don't beat yourself up if you haven't been as productive as you wanted to be during this time. And don't worry about that now. Just do the things that bring you joy. All right, that's enough of that. Let's get into the interview. Everyone, I am here with James Hughey. James Hughey is the vocalist, multi-instrumentalist, and founding member of the Nashville industrial group, Allofher Twitch. Allofher Twitch has evolved from a solo project to a 4-person group of revolving members that occasionally play live. James Hughey is also the host of the Nerd Cult Underground podcast, a show about comic book related news and media. Welcome, James.
Hello. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me on the Find Creative Expression podcast, episode 14.
My pleasure.
Okay, so how did you get into playing and creating music?
Well, I mean, when I was younger, a friend of mine played a Green Day's Basket Case for me, and it kind of made me fall in love with the idea of making music, and various other bands caught my attention until I ultimately realized that I could make electronic music, and that was really what I liked. And so that's kind of where all that grew from. Like, I started doing Allofher Twitch as a kind of just something to do on my own when I was in a band back in the early 2000s. And at the time, it was just a side project. I was never going to do it live or anything like that. And obviously that changed after about 14 years. So
cool. So was there a more like electronic album that really got you kind of into electronic music?
Well, Nine Inch Nails got me into electronic music right off the bat. And from there, like, I started listening to everything on Trent Reznor's record label just to see what else there was out there. And I had a friend named Asher who who introduced me to like Skinny Puppy and stuff like that. And the singer from Skinny Puppy did a solo album called Welt. Mm-hmm. And when I listened to that, that really inspired me to do what was ultimately Deep 13.
Cool. So you sing and play multiple instruments: piano, synth, bass, guitar, and drum programming. So which instrument is your kind of favorite to explore?
I like singing. Like that's something that I feel like I've got a talent for, and I don't feel like I have found the opportunity to push myself to my full potential with that. But that's my kind of lead instrument. Aside from that, like I'm untrained on every other instrument besides singing, and so I kind of just learn as I go. I really enjoy making different noises with synths. Mm-hmm. I find bass to be fairly natural, like basic bass. Of course, I mean there's some great bass players out there that make me look like an insect, but
yeah, I feel like I kind of learned instruments so that I could sing, so that I could write songs, like write my own songs.
Yeah, it's kind of where it came from. Like I was in two bands. My first band was called Vane, and then I don't remember why that band broke up, but I ended up joining a band called Insurrect, and ultimately there were some creative differences, to put it lightly, which made me leave that band. And that's when I kind of, after taking a pretty long hiatus from making music, I kind of thought to myself, like, there's not a lot of people in Nashville that make the type of music that I make. Mm-hmm. There is more people than I thought there was when I started doing this, but there's not a lot. And so that's when I just started doing it on my own. I'd already knew a little bit of guitar, and I'd already written a few songs on guitar, a couple of which got evolved into completely different songs on the latest album, By Design. And cool. So yeah, that kind of did the same thing, like just figured out how to write music myself. And until Mark and I started writing music together, he's a much better drum programmer than I am. That's kind of where he came in.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So when Allofher Twitch began in 2002, it was just you. And then it's since expanded into a 4-person group. So how has adding new members changed the sound of Allofher Twitch?
It changed it exponentially. Like I said, once Mark started working with me, which was a goofy story on its own, because the first time I had an Allofher Twitch set, I was just going to hit play on my laptop and sing over it like some fancy karaoke. And he offered to stand behind me and pretend like he was playing. And ultimately, he just decided that he didn't want to pretend the whole time. He wanted to actually do something. And then he remixed one of my songs, and I really liked it. And so I asked him if he wanted to work together. And so he kind of gave it the edge that it needed, and bringing his EBM style, because I try really hard to try different genres. Right. But I'm not that good. I'm not good enough to do everything I want to do and like put out everything that's in my head. And he was able to like keep me grounded and put the EBM beat on it. And then we got Michelle to play bass for us. And she also plays flute. So we started making more bass heavy stuff to give her something to do, because some of the songs we would just kind of throw a bass riff together. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to have the bass stand out more if all we were going to do is just a bassist, a synth player, and a singer. And because we could never find a guitarist.
Right.
or at least not one willing to play the weird stuff I write, because I don't know. But I've always had a problem writing guitar where, like I said, I'm not trained, so I just kind of write what sounds good in my head, and I think my rhythm is always off, because I've had, like in my first band, I would write a guitar riff and I'd give it to my guitarist, and he would play it completely different than how I wrote it, because he could actually play. And that's always been a thing that I ran into. But yeah, we've done a couple of things with Michelle doing the flute on it too, just because it was an option. Like we did a cover of Paranoid Inlay by Coil for a tribute album, and she played flute on that, and ended up being her first recorded work with us.
Oh, cool. It's interesting that you mentioned like kind of, learning how to play, like not being classically trained, and I sometimes I feel like that can kind of spark more interesting things when people kind of grow into it by like experimentation. I feel like that can kind of create some interesting sounds.
It does. It creates its own kind of world. And I've had a lot of, like, I've always told people I can play guitar well enough to fool people that don't know how to play guitar. But like if you and I sat in a room together and I tried to like play guitar, it would be embarrassing, and you would just be like, just give me the guitar back, because I don't know how to write. I don't know how to play chords, and so that really hinders a lot of what I can play. And I've seen you play, and like you play really well, so you would definitely make me. I don't know if make me look bad would be the right term for it, because that's kind of on me. But, yeah.
Well, not lately. I haven't played in a while, really. But I always thought of myself as more of like a songwriter. Like I always kind of felt like my guitar work was a little mediocre. but that's not really the point. Like, like Bob Dylan, his guitar chords are very simple, and it's a lot of C, G, D kind of, but like that's not really the point of his songs. His songs are more about like the lyrics and the storytelling, and that's kind of how I think my songs are. I'm not that I'm like comparing myself to Bob Dylan, but I'm just saying like I'm more in that songwriting.
For what it's worth, I like your music better than Bob Dylan.
Oh, well, that's sweet.
Well, yeah, I mean, I talk a lot about how much Green Day inspired me, and I know they're not like, especially amongst people my age, they're not the most popular band, because they tend to write music for teenagers. But I said I've always liked them, and they only really play 3 or 4 chords at a time. And right. Like I've argued with people about it until they finally were like, they're like, you can't sit there and say that Green Day is like a talent. I said I've never said they're talented. I said I like them. Like they have a groove that I get into, and I like the lyrics. But I mean, I know they're. If you ask my favorite singer or my favorite guitar player, nobody in Green Day is going to come up on that list. Like as much as I love them,
right? But Green Day has about that like a very unique kind of raw energy about them. Like I like Green Day too, but I think that just. It just goes to show like how everybody has like something different to offer when it comes to like creativity and art. Yeah.
And it makes for interesting songs whenever you have so much different inspirations.
Right, exactly. So what's your creative process like? Do you all collaborate when writing new songs, or are you the primary songwriter?
Mark and I both, like, I've tried to work with Mark, and a couple of times we've done it together, but he's very like standoffish, like even from me. Like I've told him before, hey man, we need to get together and try to write something. And he said, well, why? He's like, we could just send stuff to each other. So like for me, it all depends. Sometimes I'll write lyrics, like, or even just one line, or come up with a title I really like and write lyrics to it. Usually I write lyrics first and then try to put music to it. Mm-hmm. Every once in a while I'll get something in my head that I'll write the music out to. Sometimes Mark will send me music that he's written and I'll write lyrics to it. Sometimes he'll send me stuff that already has lyrics to it and I finish the lyrics to it. Mm-hmm. Lyrics are kind of, a lot of times they're my strong point. I've been trying to do different stuff with lyrics lately than I did when I first started out. But yeah, I mean, most of my songs start off in the shower.
I feel like a lot of good ideas start off in the shower. Like I know I get like ideas for plot and, you know, like novels that I'm working on in the shower like all the time.
Yeah, it's either in the shower or right when I'm going to bed.
Yeah,
and then I'll pick up my phone and open up the notes, and I just start typing stuff into my notes app and hope it makes sense in the morning.
I have a notebook that I leave on my nightstand, but it doesn't always make sense when I look at it in the morning.
I always tell myself, like, if I write some lyrics and I have a certain rhythm in my head and a certain melody, and then in the morning I'm not going to remember what that melody is, but the words are still there, and I might be able to come up with a better melody. Who knows?
Right. I've definitely sung like very rough melodies into my phone before.
Yeah, I've done that a couple of times.
Or before smartphones, I used to have like a tape recorder that I could carry around with me.
I always had a notepad with me, or when I worked at Papa John's when I was a teenager, and I would just, if I came up with a lyric, I always worked the ovens, and I was busy and I couldn't stop. But if I had a lyric in my head, I would grab a napkin and start writing on it, just in between movements, like grab a pizza, cut a pizza, write a line. And
oh yeah, you know, I used to do that too, because I worked at Pizza Hut when I was in high school, and I remember writing on like receipts and you know.
Yeah, I got an envelope in my closet that's marked various writings and musings, some of which have the dignity to rhyme, and I got so many old Papa John's napkins and just torn up pieces of paper and doomy little poems that I wrote in high school. And
that's
silly.
Really cool, though, you know. So what are some of the common themes that you return to when you write songs?
Typically just things that confuse me. I'm very like, I don't understand a lot of what goes on in the world. Like I'm kind of I'm trying to think of examples, but like when people act a certain way, I don't understand why, and so I just kind of write about it. Like I don't understand, and sometimes it's stuff that even when I'm sitting there, like, I don't understand why people do this. Like, I don't understand when people write songs about where they live. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. But I mean, everyone gets their muse their own way. Like, I'm not going to judge anybody or tell them they're a horrible songwriter or anything. I just don't get it. And
right.
Like stuff like that, but on a grander scale, I guess. Like lately, I've been writing a bit more socio-political stuff. Like I wrote a song about Casey Anthony. Right now I've got a song, and it's funny. I wrote a song about Trump, our former president, and Mark said, he said, man, that stuff will get dated. Like I sampled the thing where Trump got recorded talking about grabbing women. And he was like, if you play that, it's just going to get dated. And I mean, he's right, because now he's out of the office and me putting out a song about him just feels silly. But I mean, it's there and it's not that bad of a song in my mind. So I'll do something with it.
You know, I think like sampling old stuff, it does kind of date it, but also like there can be something classic about it or something, you know, timeless about being so specific, if that makes sense. It's kind of a contradiction.
I don't mention the president in the song. Like it will definitely, like I'm kind of a nihilist like this. It will definitely be relevant again. The lyrics, like whether or not the sample is relevant, like the lyrics itself are just about, you know, it's called Miss America and it's like run Miss America. Like basically the concept of America as a woman being under attack.
Right.
And, so that's a thing that unfortunately will probably rear its ugly head again.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we're probably a long way from not having that problem.
That's not what we're here to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. So you've sampled other pieces of art in your songs, like everything from an Elvis Costello song to a scene from one of my plays. What is the process of sampling like for you? Like, do you begin the songwriting process with whatever you want to sample, or do you add it later, or does it depend on the song?
It depends on the song. Sometimes it starts with the idea of the sample. That Miss America one that I was just talking about, it started with the idea of sampling Halloween and the scene where the kids are saying, you know, the boogeyman's going to get you. And I sampled that, which is nothing Rob Zombie's never done. But I think the idea of sampling, like when I sampled your play, that came after I wrote the song. Like that song has a long history of it being written.
Right.
Like the lyrics, like it started off as a song for Insurrect, which started off as a different song that we called the Grandma song. and then it became Pandora's Box. And I wrote it, and I made it into what people have called a rap song. It's a simple beat. I'm very proud of how it sounds. Mark has added some great stuff to it, but I think at the end of it, I didn't know how to end the song, so I just kind of took this sample of my cousin Ethan, who was in your play. What was it? He was ranting to a unconscious Mercedes about how he wanted to marry her and take her away from this life of a stripper and, you know, all that hoo-ha. And it just reeked of so much desperation that I wanted to sample it. And like it ending on that note of Mercedes, I don't even know your real name, is, to me, it was just a perfect addition to what I was already saying in that song. It's just kind of a desperate song. So I do stuff like that with samples. And then sometimes, like, I got a song that samples Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And that's just mostly because I thought it sounded cool. Like, it also samples Batman Begins and stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool.
My favorite one is your play, though, because no one knows what that's from.
Yeah, that's really obscure there.
It sounds more insulting when I hear that out loud.
Oh, no. It's not at all. I mean, it was, I think that was the only performance of that play. And, I mean, it sold out. Like,
you were in college.
Yeah, I was in college. And
that, weren't you?
Yeah, it was like.
Were you in college?
Yeah, I was in college. Yeah. And I think the art place where we performed it, I feel like that seated like 100 people or something. So like 400 people like saw that play. That's all that have seen it. So
it was a neat room. I always felt like I went and saw it, and I loved the play. Like, I always feel silly because, like I said, my cousin's in it. I was there to support my cousin, but ultimately I really loved the play. I loved the idea of it. And but we would go back to our family, and Ethan and I both come from a very strict Christian family, and we just told him, you don't want to watch it, because they would just get mad that he cusses in it.
Yeah,
or that there's a stripper or drugs, or that he makes out with so many people. Like, it's like, or actually he just makes out with Mercedes. Mercedes makes out with so many people.
She made out with.
It's been a long time since I've seen it.
I was a much edgier playwright in my 20s. Yeah. So your first release was a 2002 album called Deep 13, and your most recent album, Redesigned, was released in March of 2020. So how has your sound evolved from the first album?
A lot. When I did the first album, I did it all with Acid Pro, Fruity Loops, and SoundForge. And I had no idea what I was doing. I would just record something in the Sound Pro or SoundForge and mix everything in Acid and make the beats with Fruity Loops. And I didn't really know how to make beats. And occasionally I'll record like some guitar, and sometimes I'll listen back. There's one song on it that I tried to do the entire vocal thing in one take, and I'll lose my breath during one of it. And instead of editing it or fixing it or trying it over again like a professional does, I just let it go. And so now it just sounds like crap. And so now I've had, I've gone to college twice for audio engineering. And so now I've got that knowledge in my head. I've got way more practice making beats and using synth. I've got Mark helping me out. And Redesigned is all remixes, except the Elvis Costello cover, Pills and Soap. And it's just my take on production has grown. Like, Deep 13 still doesn't sound bad, in my opinion, because it's got a really raw edge. Other than that last song, it's got a really raw edge to it. But it's not it's one of those things like, you listen to old Misfits albums, the production on it is terrible. Most Danzig stuff, production on it is terrible. But it still sounds good. And sometimes it sounds good because the production is terrible. It just kind of adds to the sound.
Right.
I feel like that's why people like vinyl sometimes, is because it kind of, the sound ages with the wax, and some people just like that warmth.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting, like sometimes quote unquote mistakes can end up actually making something really interesting. Like it makes me think of Bob Ross and, his happy little accidents. Probably because I have
Yeah.
Bob Ross calendars like all around me and I'm obsessed with Bob Ross, but but yeah, it's just like it's a good way to think about it. Like sometimes you can do something unintentional that turns into like a really cool, sound or piece of art.
Yeah. I collaborated with a guy in college on a song, and he's like a classical pianist. And I mean, he's exactly what you imagine when you think of a classical pianist. Like he's got the pencil mustache and everything. He was a character, but he did the piano melody. I came up with a drum beat and I did a rhythm out of piano and then I rapped over it. But the rhythm, like I recorded a MIDI track of the rhythm it was just a piano chord that I came up with. And I couldn't tell you what I did wrong. I did something wrong though, but it made it sound so much cooler. Like I couldn't play that if I wanted to, whatever it was, what it sounded like. But it sounded really cool. It just had this like nice little like skip in the beat that it worked wonderfully. I don't know what I did, but I can't replicate it.
Right. That's cool though. That's cool how that happens sometimes. It's like, it is it can be a mistake or an accident or, unintentional, but then sometimes it ends up like almost better than you thought it could have been,
Yeah.
So did you have plans to play any shows like to promote the new album that were canceled because of the pandemic? And, what has Allofher Twitch been up to throughout the pandemic?
I didn't have any shows booked. Luckily, the last show that I booked took place like a week after a tornado hit Nashville. And then the COVID hit and things kind of just like last year was a rough year for everybody. It was a very rough year for my girlfriend and I. So I pretty much spent the entire year, other than that one show, just not even thinking about music. I did a couple of recordings under the name Mouse Vomit that can be found on offbrandmusic.com. They're not good. But they're not supposed to be. I recorded the entire album in one take, and it's just me hitting guitar string. Like I wrote the songs on the spot, hitting guitar strings and screaming out nonsense. And that was the closest thing I got to being musical, just because so much stuff was going on in my life that I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I was just tired all the time.
Right. And did you find that to be like therapeutic at all? Like just
the idea started when in 2019, Steven, my current bass player, and I went to Chattanooga to play a couple of shows. And on the way there, we were talking about how he and a friend that we both have named Cody Bottoms, which you met Cody because he did the sound at your show.
Right.
When you played Cafe Coco.
Yeah, I remember.
I don't know if you remember him.
No, I do. I do.
He
remember
has a
him.
project. Cool. He's got a project called Bear Vomit, I think, and Steven did a project called Raptor Vomit.
Lots of vomit going on.
It's all, I call it the vomit community, and like they it's all goofy stuff or it's weird things. And so I was like, wouldn't it be funny if I did a mouse vomit? He goes, oh dude, you got to. And then I just started coming up with weird song titles. And there's a band called Snake Vomit. And so one of my song titles is I wanted to join the vomit community, but snakes eat mice. And so it's all good fun. Like Cody loved it when he heard it, and Steven likes it anytime I do it. The second one I did was a Christmas album using a character that Ethan and I came up with called Don Clausio.
Cool.
But, yeah, I mean, it was fairly therapeutic just to stand there and not try. Just like the first one was just me hitting the guitar. The second one was just me hitting the piano. I didn't have to try. I didn't have to pretend like, edit things around to cover up any of my mistakes. I just did it.
Yeah, it's kind of like, free writing, like when you just sit down with a journal and you just write like whatever is in your subconscious. Like it can be very therapeutic to just kind of just create, you know. So
it's not always meant to be released, but
right.
Worked out this.
But I don't know. Sometimes it can be therapeutic for other people to you know, experience that as well, you know.
I told everybody the first Mouse Vomit album, which is called Tiny Spews to Cure the Blues, it's $20, but I don't recommend you pay for it because it's garbage. The second one I did, the Christmas one, I tell everybody is the second best Christmas album to come out in 2020, which is next to Dolly Parton's Christmas album. Obviously, I can't. There's no way I can top that. That's
funny. I guess just everybody from Nashville has to love Dolly Parton because
Tennessee.
Tennessee, yes, the whole state. But no, who doesn't love Dolly Parton? Like
she is the Nerd Cult Underground. She is our patron saint of Blessed Hearts.
Oh, really? Yeah, she's a badass. So what are you working? What are you working on right now?
Some new songs. Not just the Trump one. I've got a couple of other songs that I'm working on. I got a secret project that I'm trying to work on with a Nerd Cult Underground. This is the first time it's been mentioned on any show. But I can't reveal what it is yet because we're probably not going to do it. But it's there. that is the first time I've started writing something in years that isn't just music. But yeah, I'm working on some new music. I'm going to try to put out at least an EP this year. Last year, I wanted to put out a Halloween EP where I did a couple of Halloween covers, and I'm going to try to get those done for this year. So yeah, there's hopefully there'll be some new Allofher Twitch stuff soon.
Cool. So what books or TV shows or music, movies are you really into right now?
Let's see. I've recently been watching a lot of Auntie Donna, but I read a lot of comic books, read a lot of Joe Hill. I've been on a David Bowie kick here lately.
Oh, yeah. Me too. I'm always on David Bowie.
I was listening to Station to Station right before we jumped on here. I just finished my collection of his CDs short of his first one. But I collect CDs instead of vinyl. I'm that weird guy. But yeah, so I've mostly been reading comic books because that's what I do for a day job is work in a comic book store. So I read a lot of horror stuff like ghost stuff, and I watch a lot of horror movies now, and I've been getting into more cyberpunk stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing like in particular that I'm focusing on. I'm reading East of West right now, which is a very good book, a comic book by Jonathan Hickman. And like I said, I'm on a David Bowie kick, and David Bowie and Busta Rhymes are kind of what I'm listening to right now.
Awesome. That's a cool combination. So I have kind of a big question that I ask everyone. Okay. Why do you think art is important?
Because it gives us that release. I mean, there's various things you can get from art, between just giving you a release from reality, or letting you see what reality actually is, or like it can help you control your emotions. It can help. I mean, there's just so much you can get from music. Like sometimes when you're sad, you can listen to sad songs. Whenever you're happy, you can listen to happy songs. Sometimes you just want something that just makes you move fast to get the day done. Mm-hmm. And the same goes with all art. Like I've got some really nice pictures around my wall, and they just kind of, to me, they just look nice. But to a lot of painters and artists, whatnot, they mean a lot more. Like everything means something different to someone else. And like we talked about your play Painted, and after the years of, I watched your behind the scenes thing, and I've heard you talk about it a couple of times. I know for a fact that it means something completely different to you. Like the concept of the muses does not bring as much to me as what it does to you, because you wrote it. But I got something different from it.
Right.
But I'm not into a lot of plays. Like I like musicals, but I haven't gone to watch a lot of plays. Mm-hmm. So that's what I like about art, is that not only can it mean different things to different people, but it just also gives so much to us all, not only for the people that are creating the art, but the people that are witnessing the art.
Right. Cool. I like that answer. That's very cool. So where can people find you and your work?
You can find Allofher Twitch at allofhertwitch.net or on all social medias. It's ALLOFHER Twitch.
Cool.
So
and I'll link to all of your sites like on findcreativeexpression.com. So definitely go check it out.
Where you can hear this interview. You can find Nerd Cult Underground at leolegacy.com. And I also do a podcast there called Ask a Yank, where a British friend of mine and I discuss the differences between American culture and British culture. And it's mostly him asking if we really do certain things and me answering it, which I have a very Southeastern point of view. So it's not the perfect, but it's funny.
That sounds amazing.
And then, of course, offbrandmusic.com.
Okay, cool.
It's fun. And offbrandmusic.com is where I do a lot of my solo stuff. And
cool.
I mean, some people have said Allofher Twitch is my solo stuff too. But it's more of a band now.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. That was great.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I had so much fun chatting with James. I hope you found it interesting as well. Coming up on the next episode, I'm going to be speaking with author Kathy Carr. I'm excited to chat with her and catch up and talk about her debut novel. It's a middle grade book. It's called 365 Days to Alaska. I read a very early draft of it when I was at a writing residency at the Writing Barn in Austin, Texas, back in 2015. So I'm excited to talk to her about it. So that's going to be next week. And then the week after that, I'm going to do a bonus episode. So this is going to be a weekly podcast for a minute. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to the Find Creative Expression podcast. Please take a moment to leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. You can find me on Instagram at Sarah E. Crawford or youtube.com/Sarah Crawford. Also find me on Patreon at patreon.com/Sarah Crawford to support the podcast for just $1 a month. And that's Sarah, S-A-R-A, without an H. I hope you've been inspired today, and I'll see you in 2 weeks for the next podcast.